Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. And of course, the continued battle for the life of the unborn continues in the United States, in spite of the fact that Roe versus Wade has been overturned. And all of that now is back to state arguments and levels of concern. I am so honored to have with us today Frank Pavone. He is one of the most recognized voices in the pro-life movement. He serves as the National Director for Priests for Life, President of the National Pro-Life Religious Council, and Pastoral Director for Rachel's Vineyard and the Silent No More Awareness Campaign. For over 30 years, he's been on the leading edge and advocate for the unborn, traveling the country, speaking out against abortion, and reaching millions through media, ministry, and just good old grassroots activism. He does have a website, priestsforlife.org, and there's the picture of that landing page, priestsforlife.org. Frank, good to see you. How are you, friend?
Hi, Perry. It's an honor to be with you today. Thanks for having me. Doing great.
Where are you?
I'm at our headquarters of Priests for Life, which is in Titusville, Florida.
Okay, good to see you. Thank you for your time. Boy, a lot to get caught up on. What's your take on the recent ruling out of West Virginia?
You know, it's a sign, Perry, of the victory we had 3 years ago in the Dobbs decision when, in overturning Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court said, look, the courts don't have any reason to strike down pro-life laws in principle. If people want to protect the babies in the womb, they can do so. There's nothing in the Constitution that says they can't. And so we see West Virginia taking aim at these increasingly frequent chemical abortions. And sometimes people say, oh, what can we do about those? You know, they're not abortion surgical clinics. Well, we can pass laws like West Virginia said, which prohibits basically almost all of those kinds of abortions. And of course, the other side keeps challenging these laws in court, but the courts are now saying, we see this on the state level and on the federal level, listen, this is what the people want. You don't like the law? Change the law through the legislative process. Don't keep coming to judges just to strike down these pro-life laws.
Okay, good stuff. So how is this one catching fire, so to speak? Are more states looking at it?
Yes, in fact, more than half the states already have put some kinds of restrictions on these chemical abortions. So I would say the way you summarize it the right way, there is a fire catching because it's so much of a concern to so many pro-life people.
I think the other thing that we're not aware of is how these chemical abortions, the pill, so to speak, has preempted surgical abortions. The numbers are pretty staggering, aren't they?
Well, you know, yes, and they're certainly on the rise. But at the same time, you know, the numbers are also somewhat less confident than statistics we've had in the past. You know, statistics come from the Centers for Disease Control and also from the Alan Guttmacher Institute. Those have been the two sources that we've mostly relied on. And a lot of those statistics have been gathered either from the states or directly from the abortion clinics. But now, with the rise of these chemical abortions, some of these drugs being purchased at local pharmacies, with the fact that more people are crossing state lines because many states have outlawed abortion altogether, what we're finding is it's more and more difficult to get a confident read on the numbers. So the fact that a lot of these drugs have been sold, the fact that they're sold doesn't mean they've been taken. And we don't know who has taken them because they could be given to somebody else. So we're a little bit shaky now on the numbers, and I suspect it'll be that way for the foreseeable future now that these big changes have taken place. But no question, they're on the rise, and it's a obviously disturbing phenomenon because we've also seen more research showing the chemical methods of abortion are actually more dangerous than the surgical methods.
All right, so to that point, why hasn't the medical community stepped in the middle of this? It seems like to me this would be liable for those who prescribe it.
Yes, well, it could be as we get, and will be more as time goes on, as we see more of these after effects, as we get more of the stories of those that have been harmed and damaged. The problem with the abortion-related complications, because we see this in the realm of surgical abortions too, is that the very thing that a young woman would have to come forward and talk about being harmed by is precisely the thing she wants to avoid. Part of the damage abortion does is it causes a person to push it down into the background. They don't want to ever think about it again. They don't want to ever talk about it again. You know, we have the largest ministry in the world for healing after abortion, Rachel's Vineyard, right? And so many people that come to us are coming a decade after their abortion, and they're literally saying, I never spoke to anyone about it. And this is the problem that we will continue to run into. It's one of the terrible after effects of this procedure.
Okay, I want to come back to that just for a moment, but while we're here, has the effort to make America healthy again, does any of that spill over into the abortion issue?
Oh, I'm glad that you mentioned that because we have literally bibliographies that are this big about the dangerous effects of abortion. And this is not stuff that's being put together just by pro-life advocates. These are researchers, some of whom are pro-choice, people who have been done peer-reviewed analysis of different physical as well as emotional and relational and even intergenerational after effects of the procedure. And all of this for decades, all of this evidence has been piling up. And we see, for example, preterm birth, for example. What's one of the reasons for preterm birth, or breast cancer, or infertility, or various types of other negative effects? If we ask sincerely the question, what are the health impacts, the negative health impacts of abortion? What we found, Perry, is that for decades, pro-choice publications and organizations have buried this research. It's not that the research is methodologically flawed, it's that the political bias in favor of abortion has prevented a lot of it from coming to light in what would otherwise be respectable medical journals. Therefore, what do we need? We don't need in the Department of HHS necessarily a flaming pro-life advocate. What we need is somebody who's going to be objective and not a puppet of the abortion industry. And I think in RFK Jr., we have such a person who's going to be objective enough about the question. We have a president, too, who I believe is the same way, who's going to say, look, why is America so unhealthy? And if we follow that question honestly and say, listen, nothing is off the table, wherever the question leads us is where we're going to go, I think that we'll find a big answer to the question of why America is so unhealthy is abortion. And a lot of people aren't going to like that answer. But again, the evidence is already there. We just need the political will, if you will, and the honesty and objectivity to finally bring it forward.
Okay, so post-abortion syndrome being what it is, and to your point, it's usually suppressed for quite a while before it comes to the surface. And when it does come to the surface, it's very emotional. And wouldn't that be in the category of mental health?
Very much so. Mental health, a big part of it. For example, he recently passed away, but I knew Dr. Philip Ney, a Canadian psychiatrist, who spent 50 years of his life, more than 50 years, researching abortion as a psychiatrist. And he said there's nothing more destructive of family relationships than abortion. He did groundbreaking research on how abortion affects the ability to bond to subsequent children, and as a result, actually contributes to child abuse. He talked about how it contributes to the breakdown of marriages and similar things. Depression, not to mention depression, suicidal ideation. We've seen the percentages of those things. Substance abuse, they skyrocket after an abortion. These are just some of the things that the research indicates. So yes, it's a big area in mental health, and also the physiological after effects likewise are tremendous. Infertility and infection, and as we mentioned, preterm birth, and many other things as well.
I'm just curious, Frank, why we haven't heard more about this. I mean, the data's there, but those stories never seem to bubble up.
No, they don't. We're trying to address that in a couple of ways. We had right here at our Priests for Life headquarters just a few months ago a gathering, 3-day meeting, and it involved the top researchers on these matters in the country and in the world. People like Dr. Martha Shuping, another psychiatrist, people like Dr. Priscilla Coleman, Dr. David Reardon. We had them right here at our headquarters, and we were wrestling with some of these things. They can tell the war stories, of how they've had articles suppressed or not accepted or even retracted from various medical journals. That's one of the reasons we don't hear more about this. We all know the bias of the mainstream media, which is more and more becoming called the legacy media, because now we're the media. People like you and me and all these podcasts and whatnot. Praise God, we're taking more attention of more people now. But and in that sense, it will be coming out more and more. But another reason is, what I already briefly referred to. I mean, the people who have had these procedures, they want to. It's too painful for them to even talk about. But I think that another way we're addressing this, of course, is the Silent No More campaign. This is one of our projects at Priests for Life at silentnomore.com. And these are the people that have been through abortion, and because of the fact that in the Lord they have found healing, they have been strengthened and motivated to begin talking about it. When a person is healed in a very powerful way, as we see in the Gospels, they want to share their experience. And many of these people have chosen to do so. Silent No More gives them a platform to do so. And boy, when they stand up and talk about their painful experience, all these after effects start to become much more widely known.
Okay, I have a lot of questions there, but let me just go over to one other thought here. Frank, help me process, since Roe versus Wade and the battles come back to the states, and we're seeing that division now be pretty clear. We're a very blue state here in Oregon. But here's the point. Since Roe versus Wade, how would you gauge the faith community involvement in this argument since Roe versus Wade overturned?
The faith community, it has been a mixed bag in terms of this, because so many people came to me, shortly after that weekend when Roe was reversed in June of 22, and said, "Oh, I was expecting to hear something about this in church, oh, isn't this great? We have this tremendous victory." And I didn't hear anything. So many believers, and I'm sure many of our listeners would agree, they didn't hear anything on that weekend. I think I know why. And working with clergy for decades on this issue specifically, because if they were to suddenly come out in the pulpit after the reversal of Roe and say, "Hey, everybody, this is one of the greatest pieces of news ever," and they'd be kind of spiritually, jumping up and down and rejoicing in the Lord, here's the dilemma they face. People might say, "Well, wait a second, if this is such a big deal now that it's been reversed, why wasn't it such a big deal in this pulpit when it was in effect for the last 50 years?" And because so many of our clergy have been silent on this matter, and so now they feel almost embarrassed to celebrate a victory that they weren't even fighting for. Not that they didn't believe in it, but there's many different reasons that we've explored over the years that caused the clergy to be silent. In fact, I wrote a whole book about it, and I think that's one of the things that we've seen. So now and then the other dynamic going on is that some have misread the Dobbs decision, misunderstood the Dobbs decision, and thought that the reversal of Roe brought about the victory that we were awaiting, which is, of course, the protection of the babies in the womb. But that's not what the Dobbs decision did. What the Dobbs decision did, it leveled the playing field. What it did, as I briefly mentioned earlier, is that the court was saying, look, we're going to back away and we're going to leave this issue to the judgment of the people and their elected representatives, both in the state level and on the federal level. Federal level still has its role to play. We can pass laws protecting the unborn. The court is saying, all right, we're going to back away. So that means the same work we've been doing in the pro-life arena, present the evidence, show the baby in the womb, show the damage abortion does, pass good pro-life laws, and then enforce them. That same work will now bear more fruit because after all that persuading and voting and lobbying and lawmaking occurs, the law won't be struck down automatically by the court. So now it'll bear fruit. So now's the time, in other words, to engage the battle even more, not less, not to sit back and say, oh, the victory's been won, let's move on to other issues. But I think many in the faith community have thought, okay, this is an answer to prayer, which of course it is an answer to prayer that Roe was reversed, but it's not the end of the battle. It's the beginning of a brand new and more fruitful phase of the battle.
That's so well explained, beautifully explained. All right, let me take a quick break. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, Frank Pavone, what an honor to have him with us today. Check out the website, priestforlife.org. There's the picture of the landing page. You can get involved in all kinds of things, Rachel's Vineyards and Silent No More awareness campaign, all that you can engage right there, priestforlife.org. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. What an honor to have with us today. Frank Pavone is one of the most recognized voices in the pro-life movement. He serves as the National Director of Priests for Life, and he's also President of the National Pro-Life Religious Council and the Pastoral Director for Rachel's Vineyard and the Silent No More Awareness Campaign. He's been in this for a long time. He does have a website, priestsforlife.org, and there's the picture of that landing page. So, Frank, during the break, I was trying to figure out a way to ask this question. It's a tough one for me to ask because it can seem to be a little graphic. However, the fact that it is that, it kind of underscores my reasoning for asking it. Up until Roe versus Wade was overturned and the pill was coming into play, the abortion pill, most of the abortions were surgical, and the woman never really saw what was going on.
Right.
Now she takes the pill and she aborts this baby at home.
Yes.
And what she is seeing produces a PTSD moment.
It certainly does.
And you would think at that moment there would be just such a loud vocal outcry that we couldn't do anything but stop here. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to figure out what's happening here that we don't see that is so dramatic that it may be unrecoverable.
This is a great point that you're making. Let's compare it to what's been happening with surgical abortions. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes a person will come to us in our healing programs maybe a decade later. Well, what would prompt her to come? Well, maybe her sister had a baby and, she saw the ultrasound and, started to suddenly reconnect with her own experience. Or maybe she saw one of those pictures. We have many different websites, and one of them is lookatabortion.org. And maybe she saw a picture of an aborted baby and it broke the denial. But now with these chemical methods, she is literally seeing hands, arms, legs, faces coming out of her body onto her bathroom floor. And this is just so traumatizing. One of the things that we're seeing as a result is that she is coming more quickly, sooner after the abortion, to our healing programs than would have been the case when, with a surgical abortion, those body parts were kept out of her sight. So this is, I think, the beginning of the rumblings of a more public outcry. They start by coming to the places where, as we advertise, hey, there's compassionate people of faith here, as well as professional counselors ready to walk you through this pain and bring you back to hope and healing. So they are coming more quickly. The amount of time is reduced because the denial is broken. As soon as she sees that baby, nobody's going to tell her this is not a baby. And then she's going to be angry that nobody did tell her it was a baby while that baby was alive and growing in her womb. So, but the trauma is really, really bad. Post-traumatic stress disorder, as you said, we see this with the flashbacks, the nightmares, the avoidance. Some of these women that have had abortions. Look, here's another comparison. When you go to an abortion facility to get your procedure, one of the after effects we've seen for decades is that mother will actually drive out of her way to avoid going past that clinic on her way to work or on her way to wherever she's going, so that she's not shaken by that memory, by that traumatic memory. She will literally avoid that place as much as she can. Sometimes the sound of a vacuum cleaner will trigger her because that was similar to the sound of the suction machine when she had the surgical procedure. Well, what happens when it's a chemical procedure that the pill was taken at home and the baby was ejected from her body right there in her bathroom? Now, sadly, tragically, that her own home now has become the abortion clinic. And so it's like, well, what are you going to do? Avoid your own bathroom? Avoid your own house? This is it's introducing now, like you said earlier, the mental health dimension of this,
Hmm.
problems that we haven't even begun to wrestle with.
Okay. Why is this always camouflage under the subject of women's health?
That's how it was originally introduced. You know, I knew Dr. Bernard Nathanson. He was one of the architects of the abortion industry in our country, and they came up with right away the need to camouflage the language, to put it in terms of women's health, because they knew one simple thing, that people would not and did not accept abortion. Americans still don't when you face the reality of it and frame the question properly. They can get away with what they did, well, for two reasons. One is the camouflaging of the language. I'll tell you the other reason Dr. Nathanson said in a second. But it's the fact that, you know, he came up with the term pro-choice. Let's talk about choice. Let's talk about the women's health. This is the only way we can sell it to the American people and overturn a whole body of laws, which, as the Dobbs decision points out, in every state the unborn were protected. A lot of this protection started coming about at the time of the 14th Amendment, actually. In the 19th century, the science of embryology really got supercharged. It was growing dramatically, and we learned more about the unborn child than we ever knew before. And so they said, how are we going to overcome this basic fundamental thing that everybody knows, A, that it's a baby, and B, that it's wrong to kill a baby? The only way we can do it is reframe the whole argument in terms of women's health. What Nathanson also said was the way they got away with doing this goes back to your other question about faith leaders. He said the church was asleep. He said, we caught the church asleep. And he said to me, he said, we would have never gotten away with this if the clergy had been united, purposeful, and strong in fighting abortion.
Wow. Wow. This is so amazing. I want to come to another part of this. We're seeing now some medical facilities begin to ban transgender alterations and surgeries.
Yes.
Which is coming to the realization you can't make a woman into a man and a man into a woman. Okay, and the mutilation that's doing to young people. And yet here sits abortion, which is the ultimate mutilation. I'm surprised that the medical community has tolerated this as long as it has. What's your thought?
It is surprising, isn't it? You know, you touch again on such a powerful point here. Ultimately, it's the same lie behind abortion that is behind all this transgender nonsense. The reason we've come to a point in our society today that we cannot say a man is a man or a woman is a woman is because for 50 years we've been saying a baby's not a baby. You have biological truth. You have truth written into creation by God himself. It's right in front of our eyes. It's measurable. We know the genetics. We know how to analyze the cells of the human body. And yet we pretend that by our choice, we can make something into something else. We can make a man into a woman, or we can make a baby just into a choice that we can decide to get rid of. And you know, the ending of a lot of this transgender mutilation, thank God, is coming about because of the results of November's elections. I mean, we elected a man who made it a key campaign issue that we've got to get rid of this nonsense, this transgender nonsense. And most of the American people are with us. And President Trump issued an executive order saying, right after he was sworn in, saying we have to restore biological truth to the federal government. That was the policy, to say there's only two genders. Well, restoring biological truth to the federal government means, too, that we acknowledge that the baby in the womb is a baby. How the medical community has gotten away with allowing this has been more a question of money and power than medical science. That's like when people say to me, oh, this association of medical professionals took a pro-abortion position or a pro-transgender position. I said, well, they're not doing that based on any medical science. They're doing that based on ideology, politics, money, and power. And we got to make that distinction very, very clear.
One last question, Frank, and you're fascinating. Thank you, and you're an inspiration. I hope I can get you back again.
Please.
Let me ask you this. Do you think there is, as all this is beginning to get exposed, I mean, abortion is now much more out there and talked about, even with the unbelievable treatment of the abortion pill and what it's doing to women and the PTSD and all that. We're becoming more and more aware. Do you think there's a possibility that we are heading towards a revaluing of human life?
I think so. I think so because I believe in the dead end rule, which is that if you go down a road which is a dead end and you ignore the signs that say it's a dead end, you'll soon learn by personal experience that it's a dead end. Now, the church has been putting up the signs, and more or less clearly, as we were discussing before. Many people do listen to those signs, and they realize abortion is not a solution to anything, and that human life is sacred, no matter where or how it comes about. But the people who have ignored those signs, if they, to the extent that they've survived the experience, they are now turning back and they become the living sign. So, for example, we see so many young people involved in the pro-life movement. Why? Perry, there's a very deep reason why. They realize that they are survivors. They realize that when they were in the womb, their own life was not respected and protected, and they are hurt by that, and they are angry at that. And in speaking up for the unborn, they're very much speaking up for themselves. And so they have encountered the reality, and they see in their friends and in some of their relatives the grief and pain on their faces after an abortion. Hey, this abortion hurt them. It didn't help them. And so they're realizing by difficult and painful personal and family experience that, you know what? Maybe it's time that we acknowledge and respect human beings. Mother Teresa, whom I also knew, said at the National Prayer Breakfast in 1994, if we tell a mother that she can kill her own child, how can we tell other people not to kill each other? And so we hit this brick wall. We say, wait a minute, unless the unborn are protected, we're all in danger because we break the whole principle of the sanctity of human life, which you cannot break at one point and keep it intact at all the other points. Once you break it at any point, you've broken it everywhere. Once you say that any human being can be deprived of life, well, then we're all in danger. So I think, yes, we are going to start to turn a corner here.
Wow, that is beautiful. It's inspiring. Thank you. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, check out his website, priestsforlife.org. There's the picture of the landing page. Get involved. Help him with the Rachel's Vineyard, Silent No More awareness, and any other outreach that he has. You can go there and contribute and help him. priestsforlife.org. Frank, thank you. You're inspiring, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Oh, Perry, anytime, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you. God bless.